Mr. Speaker, I am a fighter and not a quitter. I recognise, though, given the situation, I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
Liz Truss currently holds the record for the shortest premiership of any Prime Minister, lasting just 49 days, beating George Canning, who literally died in office after 119 days. You might wonder whether it's worth making a video about such a short premiership. After all, she was famously outlasted by a lettuce after the Daily Star newspaper set up a live stream as a joke partway through her short premiership. The reason I think a video is warranted is that I think there is just as much to learn from Prime Ministers who do the job badly than there is from those who do the job well. Truss came to power following a long leadership election in the summer of 2022 after Boris Johnson was forced to resign due to a lack of support from his own party on the backbenches of the House of Commons. Conservative Party rules dictate that it is up to the parliamentary party to whittle it down to 2 candidates, and then it's up to the wider party to elect the leader. This meant that when it came down to the final 2 candidates, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, they were at pains to appeal to the wider party rather than the country by presenting themselves as more Thatcherite than Thatcher and therefore far to the right of the rest of the country. This highlights the first reason for Truss's failure. While she was enthusiastically supported by the Conservative membership, right-wing think tanks on Tufton Street and by the right-wing press, she didn't have a wide base of support in the country. Instead, she presented herself as a parody of Thatcher, justifying the quotation by Marx, paraphrasing Hegel, that history happens first as tragedy and then as farce. But Truss's idea of Thatcher and Thatcherism is far from the reality of her time in office. The truth is that Thatcher was far more cautious than many remember, opting for gradual reform where she could, and only picking fights she knew she could win. For example, the top rate of income tax was cut from 83% to 60% in her government's first budget in 1979, and the basic rate from 33% to 30%. But this was balanced by an increase in VAT from 8% to 15%. In fact, it wasn't until 1988 that the top rate of income tax was cut again from 60% to 40%, where it would remain until Gordon Brown increased it to 50% following the financial crisis. To give one more example of Thatcher's caution, people forget that the first major U-turn of Thatcher's time in office was her backing down to the miners in the face of a strike in 1981. It wasn't until 3 years later, after her government had stockpiled coal, that she felt able to take them on. So the second reason for Truss's failure was that she failed to learn the right lessons from the Thatcher period, because she didn't really understand the woman she admired, who was much more cunning, cautious and calculating than many remember. Instead of taking a cautious approach, as Thatcher would have, Liz Truss instead sacked the civil servant who was in charge of the Treasury, and her chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, presented an emergency budget to the country which committed to £221 billion worth of commitments, including £161 billion worth of tax cuts, and an energy price guarantee scheme to keep fuel bills down over the winter. The mini-budget caused turmoil in the financial markets as the pound fell sharply against a basket of foreign currencies, and the cost of government borrowing in the bond markets increased markedly, prompting the Bank of England, who had not been briefed about the contents of the mini-budget in advance, to intervene by buying up tens of billions of pounds worth of government bonds, because the knock-on effect of the market reaction risked causing the collapse of pension funds. Even worse, the mini-budget led mortgage lenders to increase the cost of their products, causing a direct impact on homeowners who provide a strong base of support for the Conservative Party. This led to massive political pressure on Truss, forcing her to U-turn on some of the biggest tax cuts in the mini-budget. To try to shore up her leadership, she sacked her chancellor and brought in a safe pair of hands by bringing Jeremy Hunt back into the cabinet. But it was too late by this point. Truss looked incompetent, and her U-turns meant that she had to go back on what she believed, which left her rudderless. Furthermore, what little support she had in the country fell off a cliff, and despite her protestations that she was a, quote, fighter, not a quitter, it was up to Graham Brady, chair of the 1922 committee, to tell her she had lost the support of her MPs after just 45 days, and that she needed to resign to clear the way for a replacement. After a brief leadership election, she resigned as Prime Minister and was replaced by Rishi Sunak after serving just 49 days as Prime Minister. She inherited the support of her party, a large majority in the House of Commons, and the support of right-wing pressure groups and the right-wing press. So how on earth did things go so badly wrong? Truss's premiership, in my view, reveals what happens when you fail to understand that politics, as Bismarck put it, is always the art of the possible. Economic and political constraints are real, and they can't simply be ignored. Political programs, even radical and revolutionary programs, need to be pursued with an understanding of these constraints, or the result will be disaster, as Truss discovered. Despite all this, and this might seem like a mad thing to say, but I actually think other prime ministers have had a more destructive impact on the UK than Truss, partly because she simply didn't have enough time to do more damage, and much of what she did do was quickly reversed. Still, I have to rate prime ministers more objectively than this, and so Liz Truss, by my estimation, is the worst prime minister to hold the office. Too harsh? I would honestly love to hear a defence in the comments. Anyway, for now, thank you for watching. Please do like and subscribe, and goodbye and best wishes.